Hello and welcome to Realizing the Unimaginable in Remote Learning. My name is Brian Messenger. I am the coordinator of Classroom Instructional Technology and Student Achievement with the Sewanaka Central High School District. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about our journey and how we have gone from a perfectly normal school district outside of New York City, suburban New York on Long Island, and how we have really transformed into a remote school district thanks to COVID-19 and all of the associated effects. We're going to go through what we were like before, how we got here, and what we're going to be doing moving forward. So we'll start off with a little bit about what we were before COVID. We were an iPad one-to-one district. We have over 10,000 Apple devices, the predominantly iPads. All of our students, grades 7 through 12, we are a 7 through 12 district, so all of our students get an iPad. They get a new iPad when they enter the district in grade 7, and then we refresh the device with a fresh iPad in grade 10. Our faculty operates with a MacBook Pro, and then they also get an iPad to use as an additional teaching tool. We have always focused on professional learning since we began our one-to-one initiative journey. The iPad is an amazing, powerful tool, but you really need that human connection and really well-developed teachers to make the magic happen. So we have always focused on that. Our journey is also focused on digital innovation. When our district decided to go one-to-one iPad, we really let the instruction guide the process by which we picked Apple iPad devices. And we picked them because we wanted to really innovate instruction. We wanted our classrooms to look different than they did in 1955, and we wanted to take that leap forward. So we have always focused on encouraging creativity, that student-centered learning allows students to express themselves. And just as a bit of background, I am a teacher at heart. I was a social studies teacher and administrator for over 16 years, and then I've been the coordinator of Classroom Instructional Technology ever since. It's my 19th year in education. So really, as we drive this program, it is driven around the instruction, it is driven around the teaching and the learning, and the technology is the vehicle. And with the technology of the vehicle, we definitely have the tools and we have the talent. We have over 400 apps. We have really learned how to leverage the power of Jamf to use things like web clips, use things such as iPad backgrounds to communicate with our students, whether it be to raise school spirit or to communicate important information. So when COVID-19 developed in New York and we were forced to close schools really with 48 hours notice, we were already in an incredible place. We already had basically every app we could possibly need for this adventure. We had already gotten students and faculty and parents and community members used to how we operate with the iPads. We had already started, for example, as soon as an iPad was not updated, as soon as their operating system wasn't updated, we would automatically change the background on the iPad. And we would say, you must update your iPad. And we'd pick one of the most unpopular colors imaginable. And students learned, oh God, my iOS is out of date. I better update my iPad. Otherwise, I'm walking around with this horrible color background instead of a beautiful picture. So we had already begun to create a culture where students knew that their iPad was valuable for messaging. Students understood that their iPad was an integral part of their instruction. Our teachers had already been on a journey towards putting students at the center of their learning, putting creativity at the forefront. So when we started to realize that there was a significant chance that we would be closing our school district due to COVID, we are literally, our district does border New York City. We are one of the first suburban school districts just outside of New York. So once we started recognizing that this is a pretty high likelihood, everyone was really talking about, well, what's the plan going to be? And there was 1,000,001 moving parts to put into place. But the one thing that we did not have to worry about was our instructional technology. Every student already had an iPad. Every teacher had at least an iPad. Most of them already had MacBooks. We already knew how to use everything, and we were ready to go. So we were in a really good position, as much as anyone could be, amidst the background of this horrible pandemic and tragedy. So it was an eventful 48 hours. And the spring of 2020 is a real messy success story. It is absolutely a success. We were able to continue teaching and learning from the middle of March all the way through the end of June. The entire spring was spent with 64 days of remote learning. And it was really emergency remote learning. This isn't something we had planned for years, and we were trying to launch an online university. We were facing the worst of circumstances while trying to protect our friends and families and students from this very dangerous disease. We also were trying to make sure that we conveyed a sense of normalcy, that we were able to give students that normalcy of school, to see their friends, to see their teachers, to continue learning, to continue their education. I mean, we have everything from high school seniors who are trying to finish out high school strong and graduate, to juniors who are trying to maintain their grades because they know they're looking towards applying to college in the fall, to 12-year-old seventh graders who are just in that very, very important phase in their development. And this is really something that we focused on heavily. We didn't want to just check the box and say, yep, we're continuing learning. We really wanted to make sure that students were continuing learning. We also wanted to make sure that our teachers and students and community were comfortable with what we were doing. So we didn't want to introduce anything. And as I'm sure anyone in education knows, every company was throwing free access to everything. 1,000,001 shiny objects. Join now through June. Free access to this, free access to that. We actually successfully avoided the shiny objects for the most part, because we didn't want to put stress of new technology on top of something that was already working. We were only going to introduce things that were going to really benefit the teaching and learning. First and foremost, we needed a way to live stream. We needed a way to provide live instruction. We already, as a district, in addition to all the Apple tools and Microsoft tools, we also already had provided access to our teachers to all of the Google tools. So we were already having teachers use Google Classroom on iPad and using Google Docs and Google Sheets, in addition to native Apple apps like iMovie and GarageBand, or Microsoft apps like Word or PowerPoint. We really were sort of a platform agnostic environment, which really helped us out as well. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a while. But we introduced Google Meet. At that point, Zoom was not compliant with New York privacy laws. And we already had all of our students had active Google accounts. They knew their passwords. Our teachers and our students were comfortable with the general interface of Google. So we went with Google Meet, which did serve us well. And we continued with instruction. Teachers had an option of providing live instruction every day via Google Meet, or providing asynchronous instruction through one of our learning management systems. All in all, teachers did a mix of things. Sometimes they do maybe a Google Meet on Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday, students were working independently or in remote groups. Other teachers wanted to see their students every day and were using interactive whiteboards on the iPad to continue instruction. It really was an interesting experience, because the teachers who were reluctant to adopt new technologies, all of a sudden, they had been to all the workshops. They had heard all of the sort of hoopla about use this and use that. they heard it, they were familiar with it, they understood the terminology. So when they decided, when they had to figure out how to now provide remote instruction, they're like, all right, I know this has been talked about, let me dig in. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my career in education to see all of the teachers in our district jump right in and take risks, trying new things, trying new apps, trying new approaches to education. All of a sudden, you had teachers who had never opened the GarageBand app assigning their students songs to make and reflections on literature through music. And all of a sudden, you had our music program went digital, our art program went digital, and our subjects like math or English or social studies or science or world language, they're doing really creative things. A lot of school districts decided to do away with grading for the third and fourth quarters here in New York. And we decided to continue with grading. Not because we're in love with testing kids and not because we're in love with assigning grades, but because it does provide that sense of normalcy. Students have been used to getting grades their entire educational career. And if we suddenly turned everything into pass-fail, we didn't really know if students would understand the difference. Like, wait a minute, wasn't it pass-fail before? If I got a 65 or above, I'm good. And if I got a 64 or below, I'm not so good. So what's the difference if it's pass-fail? So we kept our grades in. But we did ask that our teachers not give traditional exams. No multiple choice exams, no long essay writing exams. We asked our teachers to really focus on empathy and compassion and providing new experiences, and they embraced it. We spent April developing digital choice project-based assessments to give students projects by which they were able to create at home on their iPad using real elements of choice, where you might give students a task and they could write about it, they could sketch about it, they could create music about it, they could create video about it. And students loved it. And teachers, especially those who were very apprehensive, like, whoa, I've given multiple choice exams my whole life. Now, how am I going to be able to assess students through song? I think teachers were blown away by what students created and how much more teachers were able to actually assess the knowledge of their students and the success of the teaching and learning using digital choice projects than they were in a multiple choice test. And that's something we had been talking about here for years now, and something we've been encouraging teachers to do. And project-based learning and project-based assessments is nothing new, it's nothing revolutionary, but it was something where we were still working on that transition in our district, and it was accelerated due to the remote learning. And as you might be able to see from my office here, I do like trains. I'm a railroad engineer when I'm not a tech director and teacher. I know it's a little off, a little weird, but it's my hobby. So really, I think of it as the Innovation Express. The train was leaving, we all got on board, and we were forced to innovate. And everyone was on the journey, and everyone was moving together. It was no longer sort of the journey we had where some of our teachers were moving ahead really fast with instructional technology, and others were kind of, putting a big toe in the water. Now we all had to jump on the same train because it is going at the same speed, and we have no choice. We are 64 days of remote learning. We are digital project-based assessments. And what we're finding now, teachers really like that. And I think it forced a lot of teachers to really assess where they were at. It was a lot of teachers who had to say, you know what, I really need to evaluate what I was doing, because the way I was teaching in a classroom isn't going to work. I was doing chalk and talk before. I have neither the chalk nor the ability to talk the way I want to through remote means. I need to come up with a new way. So while remote learning was messy, while remote learning is absolutely no substitute for in-person instruction, while technology is never going to be a substitute for a caring, empathetic, compassionate human in a classroom, we did good work. We did good work. Was it perfect? No. Was it messy? Yes. But as a whole, I actually think we'll look back in this and say, wow, this forced us to really take some big step forward. So here we are in fall of 2020. We opened school on September 10th. We offered our students and our families a choice. They could either opt for full remote learning, or they could opt for a hybrid model every other day, because our schools are all older. We have one school from the 1920s and another 4 schools from the 1950s. State regulations and CDC guidelines, we have somewhere between 9 and 15 students allowed in every room. The capacity dictated by social distancing requirements is 9 to 15, and our classes typically were closer to 30 and up to 32 students. So we really were not able to offer everyday in-person instruction. When all is said and done, we wound up with somewhere between 40 and 50% of our students, their families opted for them to go full remote. And then the other, somewhere between 50 and 60% of our students are coming in every other day. So we needed to get ready. And we offered a real incredible summer of professional learning. And you can see the calendar off to the side there. We offered workshops through Apple, that they were offering workshops to anyone for free. We offered workshops with our relationship with Apple Professional Learning. We offered workshops based on, taught by our own faculty and staff. We recorded things, and this was completely voluntary. Contractually, our teachers do not work in the summer. There is no summer professional learning. We had nearly 200 teachers sign up, and most of them took multiple classes, and they really, really took a big step forward. The focus was really on synchronous instruction, what it was going to look like to go live remote instruction all the time. And that ultimately is what we are doing as a district now. Our teachers are in their classrooms. They're in their classrooms with whichever group of students happens to be there that day, anywhere between 9 and 15 students max. And then the other half of those hybrid learners are at home, and then the full remote learners are at home. So teachers are really teaching to students in front of them and students at home at the same time. And that's a big shift. That's a huge shift. And that's making everyone nervous and uncomfortable. The veteran teachers, it's day one. But again, we had the tools, we had the ability, and we had the infrastructure. It's very important as we sit here talking about what we learned from experience. The best practices that we have established with JAMF allow for all of this. You can't decorate the house until the house is built. And our foundation is so incredibly solid that we have confidence that we could push out apps at a moment's notice. We know that our students are so comfortable with self-service that they can go in. We know that for the beginning of school, we can push out wallpapers and web clips that link them to important minute-to-minute information, where I could send the 7th grade students of one school a link to a document that provides them with further links to get into all their Google Meets for the day. We know that we could set wallpapers with important reminders about doing your daily COVID screening before coming to school. We can do 1,000,001 things. And as a district, there are about 2 of us who deal with the management of the iPads every day. About 2 of us. And most days it's one, most days it's me. And I'm able to really manage those 10,000 iPads so easily with the power of JAMF. And it's important to recognize that all of this teaching and learning is possible because we don't have to spend any time worrying about the technology. The technology is worry-free. The worry comes from, let's focus on synchronous instruction. The worry comes from, how do I develop these best practices, the student-centered learning, the project-based learning, the innovation, because we don't worry about the technology. Teachers don't have to worry that Google Meet's not going to work today, or the app that I need isn't going to download and what's going to happen. Teachers know, our faculty knows that they can rely on the technology. and then they could focus on how to best implement the technology, how to best leverage the technology, to put that increased focus on creativity. And this summer, we spent time with 31 new teachers. We did workshops. We did 3 groups. That way, everyone was socially distanced. We brought them in and gave them an iPad, a MacBook, and an Apple Pencil. Welcome to the district. We then did a 3-hour workshop with them, where we really showed them to focus on that creativity. We really showed them how they can best leverage the instructional technology. Last year, pre-COVID, we did the same thing with over 40 new teachers. We have about 620 teachers in the district, so 70 of them are relatively new. And when we gave them iPads and MacBooks, their eyes lit up and said, "Oh my God, this is the best. I got a MacBook Pro, I got an iPad, I got an Apple Pencil." And they received some real passionate pleas to focus on our students, to show empathy and love and creativity. And that is how we have really learned from our experience. We know that when you focus on the heart of a lesson, we know that when you focus on what matters most, when you focus on your students, that even a pandemic can't stop good education and good instruction. And it's all possible because we've been building this ship for a few years now without ever realizing where we were going. We were focusing on what mattered. We were focusing on the teaching and the learning and the innovation. We have built an incredible partnership with JNUC. We have really, we're in a place now where we don't worry about the technology. It's just going to work. It's going to work. And when it works, we can focus on what matters most. So we're able to focus on caring about all of our students. And as we look forward as a district, that is proud to innovate, we kind of feel like we're ready. We're ready for whatever life is going to throw at us next. And we are really realizing the unimaginable. We never imagined that we would be here. When I left the classroom and decided to become the coordinator of classroom instructional technology, I never in a million years planned on leading a district's instructional technology program in the middle of a pandemic, where the technology isn't a novelty, the technology isn't a really great tool to figure out as time allows. The technology is an essential tool to connect us together, to connect us with our students, to connect our students with each other, to connect all of the above with our communities. The technology is the most essential part to our district right now. We can't live without it. We literally cannot teach without technology. And we are very lucky that we were prepared for this. We are very lucky to really have designed systems that work for us, that work for our students. We're really lucky that we already had best practices in place. And I, for one, am very grateful. I am grateful for the work we do with JNUC. I am grateful for the power of the Apple technology. I am grateful for the faculty, the staff, the students, the leadership of our school district that really brings all of this to life every day. So thank you so much for listening. I guess you're supposed to give feedback, so please do that. Say nice things. Thank you so much for joining us.